name's Fancy and my video today is about my priority TBR of non-fiction books this month. Anyway, it's getting winter and when this video is over, I'm making cookies. So fast. Like I mentioned in previous videos, I'm really interested to read more non-fiction books in the future because they are always so interesting and you learn a lot, and I always feel like I don't read enough of them. So I have a few that I want to read over the next month and they all sound super interesting. I usually always have a lot of travel memoirs on my TBR pile, but this time I thought I want to do a little bit more about, you know, more diverse things and science and history, and I just start. So the first book on my list since May is The Coming Plague by Laurie Garrett, and I discovered this book when I read The Hot Zone by Richard Preston, which is a book about Ebola. And The Coming Plague is a very thick book, I think over 700 pages, and it's like a history of all kinds of viruses on Earth. It definitely has Ebola as well and HIV. Lots of things like where do they come from, what are their symptoms, just like an encyclopedia, but a little more easy to read and a little more interesting. And this book's on my TBR for a while, and now I finally want to get to it. The next one on my list is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Yeah, Nazis. Not something someone really likes to talk about. Unfortunately, I'm from Germany myself, so that's always what we're known for, and it's really horrible. I absolutely hated history lessons in school. I always didn't understand that we have to learn about mostly really stupid people in history and yeah, probably learn from their mistakes, but I didn't want to know about them. For me, what's more important in history is how the people lived and what happened to normal people. And so I know a lot of things about the Holocaust, and I read books about the Holocaust before, but even now I don't really know what happened that it escalated so much. Like, how could people support Hitler? I just can't wrap my mind around it, and so I definitely want to read a book once where everything is explained, all the beginnings and what happened at the end and everything in between. I heard a lot about this book. It seems to be a really good non-fiction book about this topic, and it is over 1,200 pages long, which scares me a lot, but I think I definitely want to read it. And from my understanding, it has a lot of like eyewitness accounts and just memorabilia, can you say that, from the time. So they really try to construct all that history from documents they found and people they interviewed, and I think that might be a lot more interesting than my history classes in school. So that will definitely be a very depressing book, but I want to read it. And the next depressing history book is The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. That's as horrible as the first one. I first heard about the massacre in Nanking through a fiction novel I read, and that is Tokyo by Mo Haider. I read this book in 2006 and I absolutely loved it. I don't know if I would love it as much now. It's kind of a mystery thriller mixed with history from the Nanking massacre. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. If you don't know what the Nanking massacre is, I think Nanking was the capital of China at that time, and Japanese soldiers invaded Nanking and they raped and murdered 300,000 people there. The whole city, they just burned them all, and it's just so brutal. And yeah, I think it's good to know about those things, as horrible as they are. I'm kind of hyperventilating when I talk so much. Next one is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and I watched the movie when it first came out and I quite liked it, but I think the book is probably much better because it's always on all the classics list, and kind of a crime thriller investigation book. I know the story, but I think it's nice to finally read it. And then we have 3 travel or at least nature related books, because I love nature. And the first book is A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermor. He chronicles his walk through Europe, and he did this in 1933, but he wrote about it in the 60s or 70s when he was quite old. So he traveled from somewhere in the Netherlands to Constantinople, that's now Istanbul, and this is the first part of his travels. I think it's from the Netherlands to Hungary. And what's quite interesting about this book is that it's not only a great travelogue, and I like to read about them, but because it's 1933 and the World War has just started, or it started at least this year sometime, so all the countries he walked through, they were pre-war and not as destroyed as after. So he still experienced a lot of history that probably was destroyed a few years later, and it's really nice to read about this, especially for me, because I live in Germany and he crossed Germany as well. So I think it will be really interesting to read about the countries I know quite well, because they are all around me, but see them in a different light, because it's a different time and things were different then. His second book in the series is called Between Water and Woods, I think. And then the third part, I don't know. Oh, I forgot another crime book. And it's The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary L. Stewart and Susan Mustafa. This book is about the Zodiac Killer, and it sounds just super interesting. I think Gary L. Stewart grew up as an orphan or in another family, and he was looking for his real father. And through a lot of research, he discovered someone who he thinks is his father, and he also is quite sure that he was the Zodiac Killer, because the Zodiac Killer was never arrested, I think, because the main subject died before. I think that was it, because I saw the movie several times. People who read this book, they also believe him, so he might be right. And now to the last travel books, as I said, or nature books. And one is Arctic Dreams by Barry Lopez, and the other is Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey. And they are both really recommended for kind of nature books. Like the first one, Arctic Dreams, is about Alaska and about the Arctic and what it's like to live there. And in a lot of recommendations for this book, it says that he has such a huge talent for describing the Arctic nature to someone who wasn't there. It just sounds like a really nice book that makes you want to travel. And the same with Desert Solitaire. It's about a park ranger, I think, who worked for a lot of years in the desert in the United States, and he does the same thing but for desert landscapes and for, you know, the silence and being by yourself. And I think desert is a landscape that most people don't find really interesting, and I mean, me, myself, I think of thirst and it being way too hot, but I think every landscape has something that's really great and special and has to be experienced once, so I want to read this book as well. And now we already have so many books again, and so many books, and then in half a year probably I haven't read any of them, but I really want to, and maybe you read one of them, that would be great. I'm also really happy to get more recommendations for non-fiction books. It doesn't matter if it's memoir or science or self-help or whatever, I want to read them all if they are good. And another thing is that if you know booktubers who review non-fiction, and I mean not just 1 in 100 videos, every now and then, or a lot, then please recommend them to me. I already asked on Twitter, but I got no answers at all. I think there are just not enough people who do it, so yeah, please do it. And another thing, if you review a non-fiction book, use the hashtag BookTubeNonfiction on Twitter, just everything together, BookTubeNonfiction, and so we can all find each other's non-fiction reviews. That would be awesome. See you soon everyone, and bye bye.